Hello there, welcome to lesson number 7 in our series on using Fluid Designer for 3D printing to create rings. In today's lesson we're going to show you how you can create a parametric spiral ring using a spiral and also a NURBS circle. So if you start up Fluid Designer, your opening screen should look something like this. We need to go to Learning Projects, Jewelry Projects, Rings. And we're doing lesson number 7, so it's 07 parametric spiral ring, and I'll just click this button here to switch on the screencast keys, so any key presses I make should be displayed down here. And if I just zoom in on this spiral, what you should notice is that it's got a circular cross section, and the first thing that we need to do before we can create the spiral is to create this circular cross section. We don't have to have our spiral ring with a circular cross section. We can change it to a square cross section, or triangular if we like, but we're going to stick to a circular cross section today. So the first thing we're going to do is to add a curve and then add a NURBS circle. So we're going to go to add curve and NURBS circle. Now this properties window pops up here, and it tells us that the radius of the circle is 1 millimeter, and therefore the x and y dimensions of the circle are 2 millimeters. So in other words, the diameter of the circle, if I just zoom in, the diameter of the circle, the distance from here to here, is 2 millimeters. And what that gives me is a thickness of my ring of also 2 millimeters, because we're going to use this NURBS circle and wrap it around this spiral. And if I just go to view and zoom to selected again, at the moment this does look like it is just a simple circle, but if we press the tab key we'll see it's a bit more complicated than that. Because it's a NURBS circle, it has got a number of control points around it, like Bezier curves and Bezier circles. NURBS circles have got control points around them, so we could, if we want, modify this to a different shape. Before I do that, I'm going to switch on snap so that and select increments so that when I do modify it, I'll modify it in particular ways that I can easily put back. So as you can see, I'm modifying what was a circle now into a completely different shape. So there we've almost got a square look. So if we applied this, as you'll see later, if we applied this shape around our spiral, we'd end up with a square cross section. I'm just going to undo all that because I want to leave it as a circle. Okay, so there's the circle back where it was, and I'm just going to switch the snap off as well. I only switched that on so that it made life easy in terms of adjusting that shape. So if we press the tab key to come out of edit mode now, so say it looks like a circle there, it's a little bit more complicated than that. It is a NURBS circle which we can reshape. Okay, so that's the first thing that first object that we need. Now the second thing is we need a spiral. So if we go to add curve and spirals, add curve and spirals, again it's important that this toolbox is open. If the toolbox isn't open, you can always press T on the keyboard. T will open and close the toolbox, because we've got some parameters in here that we can change. Now let's just zoom to selected again. Now we can't really see the spiral at the moment because it's overlapping with the NURBS circle. But you can see it now. Look, if I change the spiral type to 3 or to 4, you can see that the spiral changes shape. So spiral type 1 actually does look like it's a circle. So that's we don't need to change spiral type. I'm going to leave that as is. And we're not going to change curve type or spiral direction either. But we are going to change the number of turns. We're going to increase the number of turns to 4. Now you can't see anything at the moment, but we will do as we change some later values. Now steps 24. Now 24 probably means 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. If we count around it, there will be 24 segments around the object. But we don't want to change that either, not in this lesson. The next thing that we want to do change, though, however, is the radius growth. So if we click on this one, you'll see what happens. Now we can see the 4 turns, because the radius growth does what it says. We start off with a radius of 1. Radius growth means after we go round 1 turn, we, instead of a radius of 1, we're a radius of 1.09 at this point here. When we go round the second turn, we're a radius of 1 plus 0.09 plus 0.09. So that's what radius growth is doing. And we want to set this at 0.5, so I can just type that in. Okay, so that's just going to, we'll see when we create the solid ring what effect that actually has. So that's the radius growth. Now the next thing we want to change is the actual radius itself. At the moment, this radius here is 1 millimeter. So we want to increase that, and as you can see, as we increase it, the actual spiral is moving away from the NURBS circle. In the center here, what's left is the NURBS circle. This is now the spiral that's moving away from it, and we want to set the radius to be 10. Okay, so I'm going to actually type it in, 10, and then just zoom back. Now what a radius of 10 does is it's saying it's the distance from the center there to the start of the spiral. So if that's 10 millimeters, that means this diameter is 20 millimeters. Now that's obviously important in terms of the fact if you're printing a real ring, you do not want to know exactly what the internal diameter is. Now it's a little bit more complicated than that, because once we add some thickness to this spiral, the inner diameter will change anyway, but it's a good idea to have it roughly the right size. So that's what the radius does. And then the final thing we want to change is the height. Well, as we do that, you can see what's happening. Each successive spiral is moving upwards. So this is, the height is giving us the width, if you like, of the ring. We want to set it at 6, so I'm just going to type in 6 now. Okay, so there's our spiral with 4 turns and a radius of 10. And we've also got this radius growth. Now what the radius growth means is the radius at the bottom of the ring is smaller than the radius at the top. So the ring actually tapers outwards. It will be a smaller radius, a smaller diameter at this end than this end. So the ring will taper outwards. And you can see that in the finished object. It's smaller at this end than this end. So we've now got set all the values in the properties panel here for the spiral. We don't want to make any more changes there. So what we need to do now is we need to give this spiral some thickness, and we do that in the properties panel. And our spiral is a curve, and in the properties panel there is a curve icon, and when we click on that icon, it says show the curve data information. We can see that there are a couple of things in here, and a couple of properties that we can change. Now the one that we need to change, well, there are 2 things we need to change here. First of all, we want to change the bevel object. And when we do that, when we click on there, you can see the name NURBS circle. That's the first item we put onto our workspace, the NURBS circle. And when we select NURBS circle, what the system does is it wraps the NURBS circle all the way around the length of the spiral. So it gives the spiral a thickness, a diameter of 2 millimeters. It just wraps the NURBS circle around. Now if we zoom in, you'll see the one thing it doesn't do is it doesn't fill in the end, and the same is true as the other end of the spiral. But all we need to do is to tick this box here, fill caps, and that fills in the end of the spiral. So we do need to tick fill caps. Now this won't make a perfect job of it in terms of 3D printing, but when we go to NetFab Basic, any little errors there are at the end there, NetFab will sort it out for us. So, bevel object NURBS circle, fill caps. To apply this in Fluid Designer, we always need to go to Tools, Object Tools, and convert it to a mesh. When we do that, it will disappear. There's no curve icon here now. This is now a mesh, it's not a curve anymore, so we can't change those properties again, so you do need to be sure about what you're doing before you apply it. So if we now delete the original object, X to delete, here's the one that we've created today. Now the only thing is now is if we're not happy with the, well, let me just go to view from top, and if I just zoom in, you can see it tapering away. That's not because we're in perspective mode, it's because this does, there is those radius growth, so it does taper. And if we use the interactive ruler and we measure the internal diameter of this, it's 18 millimeters, so it's a little bit less than the 20 millimeters that we set it up. If we wanted to adjust the size of this, if we wanted to resize it, we could always, as you've probably seen in earlier lessons, we could always add a cylinder, size the cylinder to the diameter that we need for our ring, and then S to scale the ring. I'm not going to do that in this instance. Oops, I have actually accidentally added that. I didn't intend to. I'll just delete that. And I'll also delete the NURBS circle. It won't print anyway, but let's just get rid of it. So the only thing we've got is our spiral. So I'm not going to resize it in this particular video. I've showed you a few times before how to do that. What I'm going to say now is that what we need to do is to save it. So we go to File and Save As. Go up through the menu system and go to My Projects, Jewelry Projects, Rings. So we save lesson 07, save it as a parametric spiral ring with a rounded cross section, and you save it as a Blender file. Now it is very important with this one that we need to go to NetFab Basic and fix it. So if we export it as a wavefront object and export it to the desktop with the file extension OBJ, and then if you run NetFab Basic and go to Project and Open, go to the desktop, open 07 parametric spiral ring with a rounded cross section, you'll see you do get a warning red triangle. That's exactly what I was expecting. Now you can probably see a little bit more clearly here that there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There are 24 segments around here. So we've got a relatively chunky ring. If we wanted a much more smoother ring, we'd have to increase those number of segments in the properties window back in Fluid Designer. But here what we need to do is to go to Extras and repair the part. And you can see that it's highlighted in yellow at the end. Fluid Designer does not make a perfect job of tidying up, putting in end caps as they're called. So if we just click Update, we'll see what the problem are. Well, there's some border edge problems and there are 4 holes. But if we run automatic repair and execute it and click Update, not a problem. NetFab's fixed it all. No border edge problems, no orientation, no holes. 1 shell. So we just need to apply the repair and remove the old part. And as you can see, our warning red triangle is gone. So we should be okay with this. So if we go to Part, Export the part as a wavefront object, export it to the desktop as the repaired file, and save it. And that's it. That's the printable file format. Okay, so we've created for you there a parametric spiral ring with a circular cross section. But if you modify the NURBS circle, you can come up with any cross section that you like. Okay, so that's it. That's the end of this lesson. Thank you.